I'm going to read a little bit from Eastern and Central Europe. I left off over here, which is Cathedral Square. Let me just take the tab off. Okay. So, Cathedral Square. The paving stones around Cathedral Square show the outline of the wall around the lower castle, a defense that made Vilnius a 14th century bastion against the Crusades. At the square's western end in the Vilnius Cathedral belfry, which was originally part of the fortifications. There was also a western gate where Vilnius Cathedral stands today. The square's eastern end is dominated by a statue of the city's founder, Grand Duke Gediminas, unveiled in 1996. It conveys his predilection for diplomacy over force. In the square's center is a tile marked Stepuklus Miracle, reputed to be the point from which the Baltic Way, the human chain linking Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn in 1989, started. Locals believe that turning around on the tile 3 times makes wishes come true. Lower Castle. Situated on the left bank of the Neris River, the Vilnius Castle complex consists of the lower and upper castles. Vilnius Cathedral, the new arsenal, the Ducal Palace, where the Grand Dukes of Lithuania resided, and other buildings that stood at the foot of Castle Hill and survived the sieges of the 14th century, are known as the Lower Castle. In the 1520s, the palace was renovated in Renaissance style by Italian architects invited by Sigismund the Old, 1506-48, and his wife. Destroyed by Russians in 1802, the Ducal Palace is being rebuilt to provide Vilnius with a symbol of past glories. Once completed, the building will hold a museum devoted to the courtly culture of Lithuania's Grand Dukes. Upper Castle. The oldest part of the Vilnius Castle complex is the Upper Castle built atop Gediminas Hill, the western tower, the only remaining part of this complex, which once included defensive structures, is today the symbol of independent Lithuania. The viewing platform at the top provides a panorama of the spires and rooftops of the old town to the south. Of funicular form, the courtyard of the Applied Arts Museum offers a ride to the Upper Castle. The stone buildings of the western tower were built in 1419 and restored in the 1950s. According to legend, while on a hunting trip, Grand Duke Gediminas dreamed of an iron wolf howling from the hills in the park. This, his pagan priest said, was a sign that a fortress should be built there. As a result, wooden upper and lower castles and another one on the adjacent hill were built. Applied Arts Museum. The 16th century old arsenal houses the Applied Arts Museum, which hosts major state-sponsored exhibitions on topics relating mainly to the history of Lithuania, the Grand Duchy and Sacred Art. One of the permanent exhibitions in the museum displays Lithuanian folk art from the 17th to 19th centuries. illustrating the heavy impact that Christian themes had on traditional mediums such as sculpture. The collection includes wayside wooden crosses, shrines, saints, and rupintoiles, Lithuanian local representations of a weary Christ holding his head in his right hand. Particularly illuminating is the work of Vincas Svirskis, 1835 to 1916, a prolific craftsman who carved many shrines for farmsteads and villages in the Kėdainiai and Kaunas regions. Over here is this library. Looks like the ceiling is all like painted. Is that painted? Or is it just like, no, yeah, I think it's painted because it's an archway. Colorful interior of Litera with its collection of books and study material. Vilnius University. Vilnius University. The oldest university in Eastern Europe, Vilnius University was founded as a Jesuit college in 1568, before becoming a school of higher education in 1579. The current campus, constructed between the 16th and 18th centuries, is a combination of different architectural styles. Lithuania's largest university, it has 13 courtyards and multiple buildings. The most impressive of its courtyards, the Great Courtyard, has open galleries dating from the 17th century, which were later lined with dedications to professors, accessed via a passage from the western side of the Great Courtyard. The observatory courtyard, by contrast, is a serene enclosed garden from which the observatory and its zodiac symbols can be seen. Sarajevo's courtyard, the oldest part of the campus, is located north of the Great Courtyard, and at its far end is the bookshop Litera. Frescoes caricaturing professors and students decorate its interior. These were painted in 1978 by Lithuanian artist Antanas Kmieliauskas. This is facade of St. John's Church and adjoining bell tower. St. John's Church. At the southern edge of the Vilnius University campus, the impressive facade of the Church of St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, and the nearby bell tower dominate the Great Courtyard. The original Gothic church, built here in 1426, was reconstructed in 1749 in flamboyant Baroque by Jan Krzysztof Glaubitz. He was the most influential of the Vilnius late Baroque architects, and one of the creators of the distinct school known as Vilnius Baroque. The magnificent structure boasts an overwhelming four-tier facade made up of clusters of columns. The church has 10 imposing altars that are interconnected. These faux marble altars with Corinthian columns illuminate the otherwise austere interior. Initially, there were 22 columns, most of which were removed during further rebuilding in the 19th century. At 68 meters, 223 feet, the bell tower, which was given 2 additional tiers by Glaubitz, is considered the tallest structure in the old town. There's a map here. street by street, town hall square to the gates of dawn. Lithuania's distinctive Baroque architecture, known as Vilnius Baroque, can be admired in the outstanding monuments clustered around the Church of Saint Casimir and the Gates of Dawn. The enchanting collection of the towers and sculptures was built during the 17th and 18th centuries by Italian and Polish architects and their Polish-Lithuanian noble patrons. The buildings are elegantly designed, with symmetrical facades reflecting an unmistakable Italian influence. Nonetheless, the regal atmosphere, so unique to Vilnius, distinguishes this place from similar architectural areas of other European cities. Over here, the Church of Saint Casimir. This church was the city's museum of atheism from 1963 to 91. The crown atop the central dome symbolizes Saint Casimir's royal lineage. Over here, Town Hall Square, which is this part. This busy square has the impressive town hall as its focal point. The hall's bold classical portico was designed by the renowned Lithuanian architect Laurynas Stuoka Gusevikas. Sorry about the donkey. I don't know if you heard that, but the neighbor has a donkey. He started making noise all of a sudden. Okay. Wojciech Gatwe, which is this here. One of the city's oldest streets, Wojciech, resembles a park during the summer, with its outdoor cafes and a pleasant central tree-lined walkway. And Contemporary Arts Center, just there. A Soviet-era building is now a venue for groundbreaking art. This here is Saint Casimiro Gatve. Named after Saint Casimir, the narrow street snakes around the back of the church towards Uzupis, a district filled with cafes and art galleries. So it's here. And then Church of the Holy Spirit. Church of Saint Teresa. Scenes from the life of Saint Teresa, revered for her mystical writings, adorn the vaulted nave of the church. The frescoes were painted in the late 18th century, following a fire in the 17th century church. And then this here, this building. Gates of Dawn, a pilgrimage site. This gateway to the old town protects a silver-covered painting of the Virgin Mary, said to have miraculous powers. Basilian Monastery, which is here. The now dilapidated monastery complex was used as a prison to hold anti-Russian activists, including the poet Adam Mickiewicz in the 1820s. Next is Town Hall Square. Fully repaved in 2006, Town Hall Square was for centuries a marketplace and the center of public life. It still bustles with activity, especially during the annual Kaziuko Crafts Fair, a festival of traditional art, and crafts marking Saint Casimir's Day. When stalls line the square, The main building of the square, the town hall, was earlier the site of a court. Prisoners were marched from its cells to the square to be beheaded. The building was constructed at the end of the 18th century. Today, the town hall boasts numerous cultural and social events around the year. The Church of Saint Casimir. The first Baroque church of the city, Saint Casimir, was destroyed by fire 3 times after being built by the Jesuits between 1604 and 1635, prompting extensive reconstruction led by the architect, mathematician, and astronomer Thomas Zebrowskas in the 1750s. Much of the interior was destroyed in 1812 when Napoleon's army used the church as a granary. It became the Russian Orthodox Church during the 19th century, when onion domes were added to it. It served as a Lutheran church for the German army during World War I, and was then returned to the Jesuits and restored in the 1920s. The central dome was rebuilt in 1942, and a crown was added. The Soviets used the church as a museum of atheism from 1963. It was reconsecrated in 1991 after heavy renovation. This picture at the top is nave and altar in the Church of Saint Casimir. And then at the bottom says Madonna of Mercy, seen through the window of the Gates of Dawn. Gates of Dawn. The classical chapel of Gates of Dawn follows the centuries-old custom of having a chapel or a religious image in every gateway to safeguard a city from outside enemies and protect departing travelers. This is the only gateway from Vilnius's original defensive walls to have survived a series of attacks. The focus of this chapel is the Madonna of Mercy, an image reputed to have miracle-working powers. It was painted on oak in the 1620s and encased in silver 150 years later. The miracles attributed to it were faithfully recorded by nuns at the neighboring Carmelite convent. Hundreds of hearts of different sizes stand out on plates of silver around the painting. The image was originally placed on the gate in a recess with shutters to protect it from the elements, but was shifted to a wooden chapel in the 17th century. The chapel that houses the image today dates from 1829, when it was rebuilt to replace an earlier Baroque version. A site of pilgrimage, it was one of the first stops made by Pope John Paul II when he visited Lithuania in 1993. And this image here is a stained glass window at the State Jewish Museum. The hub of the city's now tiny Jewish community, this small museum displays copies of ghetto diaries and handwritten notes on the backs of cigarette packets about life in the ghetto, as well as items that remained from the museum that existed before World War II. Several objects that miraculously survived from the Great Synagogue, demolished by the Soviets, include a 10 Commandments bas-relief. The building plays host to a newspaper in Lithuanian, English, Yiddish, and Russian, Jerusalem of Lithuania. It is also the venue where groups such as the Union of Former Ghetto and Concentration Camp Prisoners and the Union of Jewish War Veterans meet. Exhibition of Lithuanian partisans at the Museum of Genocide Victims. Holocaust Museum. Also known as the Greenhouse, this department of the State Jewish Museum reveals some of the horrors that befell the Jews of Lithuania during World War II. A display on Jewish life before the terror unfolded is followed by maps and photographs of how and where the Holocaust was executed. There are also descriptions of the harsh life in the ghettos and eyewitnesses accounts of the mass killings of 100,000 people in the forests of Panerai outside Vilnius. Holocaust Museum Annex of the State Jewish Museum. The Museum of Genocide Victims. Also known as the KGB Museum, the Museum of Genocide Victims was opened in 1992 on the first floor of the former KGB building. In the effectively designed display area, personal stories are used to reveal the regime of terror under the Soviet occupations of 1940 to 41 and 44 to 91. The exhibits here chronicle Soviet repression in Lithuania, the cattle car deportations to Siberia, and the futile efforts of the Forest Brothers, who fought a guerrilla-style campaign against the Soviet regime with strong support from the locals underground. The cells that were in use right up until the late 1980s are even more overwhelming. They include the smaller cells used in winter, with no glass in their windows, and the floors covered with water, as well as an execution chamber displaying, under glass, the recent exhumed remains of victims of the era. In 1997, the museum was taken over by the Genocide and Resistance Research Center of Lithuania, a state institution dedicated to investigating atrocities that occurred in the country during the Nazi and Soviet occupations. So, I'll stop here for today at Trakai Island Castle. So it's a little bit from Eastern and Central Europe. Yeah, hopefully I helped you fall asleep a little bit. I'm sorry about my throat, I don't know why it's acting up. Maybe it's just the cold. But, yeah, thank you for watching my videos, and, thank you for subscribing and liking and commenting and everything. Yeah, hope I helped you fall asleep a little.